So hello and welcome. And if this is your first time joining us, we are happy to have you here. We did have quite a bit of interest in this topic, so I think this is going to be a fruitful hour. And I would like to welcome our presenter, Mary Ann Stark. She's going to be presenting today on assertive communications, leading difficult conversations on campus. So you may have seen the Higher Education Leadership Lens article that was released last week. Please advance the slide. That's where you can navigate to it if you didn't see it in your inbox. Can you advance the slide, please, Mary? Thank you. Okay, so this is what the article looks like, and I really encourage you to read that if you haven't already. Not only is there an excellent article that was written by Maria Kahn, a graduate student assistant here at the SUNY SAIL Institute. There's also an audio blog by our presenter, Mary Ann Stark. And we also include an infographic, so something that you could easily print and share with your colleagues on campus or share virtually in any of your social media spaces. If you do not receive the SUNY SAIL Institute newsletter and you're interested in being alerted when a new article is published, you can easily do that right from the sunysail.org webpage, the homepage. If you scroll to the bottom of our homepage, you can click on the button to enroll in our newsletter. So those will come to your inbox as they are posted. So thank you. So I am pleased to be joined by Mary Ann Stark. She is our leadership development consultant here at the SUNY SAIL Institute. She brings with her over 25 years of professional experience in higher education, business operations, and nonprofit management. She is known for being an inspiring leader with dynamic skills to teach and motivate others to follow in her passionate vision. Mary Ann and I have worked together over the past several years, so on a personal note, I am thrilled to be working with her to bring all of you this very important webinar. So with that, I will turn the floor over to Mary Ann. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. Hello, everybody. I'm so thrilled to be back at SUNY and having this talk with you this morning. You know, this is such a great topic, and Carol and I were talking a little bit about, you know, the amazing participation that we got from it, the response that we got. We wondered, like, geez, why? You know, this is great. And I said, you know, this is a lifelong topic. You know, sometimes we go to these sessions and we're like, great, you know, we got a lot out of that. But this is one of those sessions that you can just kind of keep going to over and over again because life happens and there's so much emotions involved in having difficult conversations that you could pick up one technique today to deal with a situation that you're dealing with, and then 6 months from now you'll deal with something else and be entirely different, and you'll go to the same workshop and you'll pick up something new and you'll be like, I didn't hear that last time, but that would be really helpful in what I'm dealing with today. And so it's good to always have that refresher, and you'll just be amazed at a new little tips or tricks that you put in your toolbox, and you'll help with the next scenario that comes along. So that's how I kind of look at these types of things. And so perhaps it's why you signed up for the session today, that there's something that happened recently or that you're currently dealing with that you're looking for just a refresher or something new that might help you get through your next difficult conversation. So welcome. This really is just a sneak peek into what our in-person workshop is going to talk in much more greater lengths on Friday, September 28th. And so today I'm just going to talk about the portion that talks about you and your own comfortableness, your own style with being effective and confident in your own assertiveness level in handling these kind of conversations, if it's personal or professional. So I really encourage you to have a pen and paper handy as we're going to explore your own assertiveness style. So, and Carolyn already mentions the blog that's posted on the website. So to begin, let's look at your own opening reflection and discussion. You can feel free to use the chat like Carolyn said, or again, just on your own, think about these two questions to begin with, and we'll come back towards them at the end. With what types of people or in what types of situations do you wish you were more assertive? And what one thing would you like to learn that would boost your confidence in dealing with those people or situations? So just take a moment and think about those. You know, what is that one thing that would truly, if you learned this technique, would make you more effective in having these type of conversations? And hopefully today, as you go through the program, that you can walk away with some of those tips and tricks to assist you going forward. So to continue on with your own self-reflection, how do you really relate to others? Okay, so which phrase from each row below best describes you, and how do you relate to others? So from each one of the columns, A, B, or C, there'll be several things that go across the screen. Just keep a tally from each column, A, B, or C, which one best describes you. And people say, are you talking personally or professionally? Well, I guess for this point, it's professionally, but hopefully you're not changing your style too much from home to work, but let's just say professionally if you really had to ask. I avoid problems, I attack problems, or I attack people? Which one would best describe how you relate to others? I relinquish my rights, I claim my rights, I impose my rights. I feel inferior, I feel equal, I feel superior. I fear others, I respect others, I dominate others. I let people guess how I feel, I let people know how I feel, I make people feel how I feel. I seek to please, I seek solutions, I seek satisfaction. I store anger, I express anger, I act out of anger. I respect others, I show mutual respect, I respect myself. I lack confidence, I appear confident, I act superior. I hope for a response, I ask for a response, I demand a response. I give in, I negotiate, I dictate. I feel guilty, I take responsibility, I blame others. I am abused, I am respected, I am feared. Now, if you would just tally up the number of responses that you had from column A, and then B, and then C. So in which column did you have the most responses? A, B, or C? And you can feel free to put them in the chat if you'd like. But I can tell you that the characteristics of an A are those of passive communication styles, B are assertive communication styles, and C are aggressive characteristic styles. So hopefully you had a lot of responses in B. But if you're not, you certainly can grow from passive styles into assertive styles. And if you have aggressive tendency with your styles, that you certainly can learn how to tone those down and become more assertive. And I'm sure that as you went through it, you thought of people who have a tendency to communicate like that you work with or interact with on a daily basis like that. And it's another reason to come to the in-person, because we'll be talking about those styles in much more depth and how to work with people like that, and also people who are passive-aggressive styles as well. They lead us to one of our first polls. Just really interested to hear what you think are some of those most difficult conversations, what those topics are to have on campus. And you see Carolyn has put up our first poll. So, and I think that you can select as many of these topics that you find the most difficult things to talk about on campus.
So the results are rolling in, and thank you for responding to the poll. As Marianne said, you can select all that apply. Excuse me. So we'll leave this poll open for another 30 seconds or so. So if you haven't submitted your answer, please do so. What are the most difficult conversations to have on campus? Okay. So you can see the results here. I don't think that's any big surprise that employee performance issues are very difficult conversations. I'm sure Marianne has more to add to this.
No surprise at all, Carolyn. And I'm not sure if you're seeing any other commentary in the chat room at all, but yeah, those are always the most difficult. And I don't. Feel free to open up the mics, or if there are comments, let me know. I'm not sure I can see those, but yeah, those are definitely the most difficult to have with people. It's the perception versus reality. The expectations are not meeting expectations. The challenge of people thinking that they're much better than they are. And so the conflicts always brew within there. And then not only the manager versus the employee, but then the team aspect of it, the gossip in the office that creates this awkward dynamic that goes on from that. So very, very challenging on how to get your hands around that. So for sure. So I am surprised that no one selected the campus conduct issues. You know, the civility on campus lately just seems to be such a hot topic. You know, just civility issues in general, free speech, and it just seems to be a very, very hostile environment sometimes, which is good, I guess, if you're not seeing that lately. But we'll be talking at the workshop in general. We certainly will be, what's a good workshop without role plays, right? So we'll be taking many of these things and turning them into role plays, and really taking what we learn and try to make them interactive and work through some of the techniques that you're learning and work them out into some of these scenarios. So we'll try to put them into place so you become more and more comfortable with trying to work that out. So interesting. Thanks, Carolyn. But the second poll that I want you to do really talks about, why do you avoid having those conversations, though? What is the root cause of that? Because again, I'm talking self-reflection, the emotion that goes into having those conversations. I think you really have to get into that root cause of it first, because you have to be prepared to have that conversation. So the second poll is, why do you avoid having those difficult conversations? So, and again, I think you can check off all that you might be feeling into the second poll. Why do you avoid having difficult conversations?
Okay, Marianne, if you could advance the slide, then our slide will match the poll. But the poll has been launched, so feel free to vote.
Thank you.
And someone did catch me. I did not set up that last poll correctly so that you could answer with as many choices as possible, but this one is set up correctly. So please click all that apply.
Yeah, and if there's some other reason, I would like to hear that in the chat poll. That would be interesting to me to hear what you, why you're avoiding having that conversation.
Okay, the results are rolling in. We'll give it another 40 seconds. Okay, hopefully you voted, and we will launch the results here.
Wow. So these, I'm sure there's definitely more than one reason for all of this, and very tight race here. So I think that it would be misunderstood and make matters worse. So some of the things that I'm talking about then here will definitely help you at bringing clarity to how you're setting yourself up to have those conversations, trying to remove some of the emotion away and giving you some really strong techniques on how to have the conversation. But there's a lot of emotion in relation to this, not being liked. We don't want to hurt someone's feelings, concerned that the exchange will just get heated and escalate. Yep. It will just make matters worse, in the office drama, not worth it, so yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, you're in the right place. I have to tell you that. So all I do know is that not having the conversation, it makes matters worse. And I've never been in a situation where not having it, and I just hope that it went away, Matters just never went away. I've never been that lucky. I don't know anybody on the conversation. If you've been that lucky and it's gone away, can you just raise your hand now? Because I've never been in a situation and it's gone away. It certainly has gotten worse. And other people have been actually have probably thought less of me, that if I didn't confront something, that they were actually probably thought less of me for not confronting it, because they also saw the conflict. So, my thoughts on that is that the reason for you becoming more assertive and more confident and learning how to become more prepared with your clarity and purpose, and in your confidence level and your communication techniques of doing this well, is that you're responsible for what you say and how you say it. And the more you're able to do that well, it means that you don't have to be responsible for how other people will interpret it, and you're not responsible for how it makes people feel. So you can remove the guilt associated with that, and remove the emotion away from the logic that's necessary to handle any situation, because the problems will not go away, they'll just get worse. You also have a right not to assert yourself. I use a 24-hour rule for me. And that helps me take that emotion away, because I know if I deal with the emotion at that particular time, I'm going to be aggressive, and that won't be appropriate. So for me, I say, well, if I'm still upset about this in the morning, if it still bothers me, then I know that I have to address it. But that time period gives me a chance to cool off. And it also gives me a chance to bring that clarity and create a plan of how I'm going to deal with it appropriately. And here's one of the things that I do, that I use. My next approach, my approach that I use, and if you've listened at all to, or if you read the article that Maria did for the Institute, and my blog that I did, I talked a lot about that I journal a lot. And it helps me bring clarity. And this is a slide that I took from my emotional intelligence workshop. And it's a journaling technique that helps, I think, bring about a little bit more self-awareness and clarity to events, and helps bring direction to take. And it's an ABCD approach. And let me go through it with you real quick. If you do journaling, oops. There we go. It helps you kind of describe what has happened. You talk about the triggering event. The next thing is what you believe about the situation, the self-talk that you say to yourself about something, which can be pretty powerful or negative as well. So you want to be careful about that, what you say to yourself about it. So if somebody, did something in a meeting, for instance, you know, and then what you say to yourself about it. Well, I can't believe that Marge, she always does that to me, and she just did it on purpose, and this is me saying this to myself, right? So you want to kind of write that out to yourself. And that's what I say. And so then what was the consequence of it? What feelings was I left with, or what were the behaviors surrounded by that? And I was like, well, she did it on purpose, and she always does that to me because she wants my job. So, you know, because we do this to ourselves, right? So we get ourselves all kind of wrapped up into those situations. But the biggest part about this approach is D, this whole debating and disputing and discarding what I've talked about in B and C. Where really is the proof? And here's where the logic comes into this. What really happened? And the biggest thing here for me is, if this happened to someone else, what advice would I give to them? Because aren't we really good at that with other people, but we very rarely can take our own advice? If someone else came to me, or if someone else came to you with that same situation, what would you tell them to do? How would you advise them? But when we're in this situation, we're kind of too close to the fire and we don't see that. So if someone else was in that situation, what would you do? And so did I learn anything from those past experiences, perhaps? And can I apply it to this one? It has that calming effect on the situation. Again, taking that emotion out of it. So, and the E part of it is, what are those effects that you discovered? How has that perhaps shifted your feelings and behaviors about the whole event, so that now you can logically chart your approach and what you would do? To me, that is a much more logical approach, removes the emotion, and it helps you prepare for that conversation going forward. So again, it's just it's a journal. If after a while, if you're not a journaler, you could probably kind of go through that in your head, but it will help you if you do that 24-hour timeout that you want to give yourself if you're a very emotional person. But I think you'll benefit from that if you just take a pause so that you're not aggressive in your approach. Then this will help you when you're trying to set up that conversation, because you're going to have that conversation. It's not going to go away. So now here are some other tips for effective communication in general. The most important thing to be assertive is to take ownership for what you're saying. And the number one way of doing it is always using I statements. And you hear this in people's language a lot when they say, well, everyone thinks, or everyone believes, or the whole company says, or the whole department wants to do this. You know, those are overgeneralization statements, and you're really hiding behind the facts and what's really going on. A much more powerful statement, an assertive person will say, I want, I believe, I think, I need, okay? So that's taking ownership for what you're saying. So use I statements. The next thing is to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. People who have a tendency to kind of go on and on with their stories is kind of making you believe things. They are looking to try to convince you on things, and you know, they probably were trying to convince themselves on something as well. So if you believe it, then you can say it with I statements and keeping it short and sweet and to the point. Going along with that is just being direct. Ask for what you want, be articulate, and give reasons for why you want it. The importance of listening, I can't stress enough. When you don't know what to do and you don't know what to say, listen. Listening is very important. You look like a reasonable person. Listening also de-escalates hostile situations. If people are becoming aggressive towards you, listening will calm them down, and you will look like a reasonable person as well. Sometimes listening also will be a point where you just need to calm people down and buy time to say, okay, looks like we need to cool things off at this point, and we're going to stop the conversation right here, and let's reschedule it again for tomorrow so we can pick it up at that point. So I think sometimes you need to have that cooling off point, and listening allows both parties the time to calm things down and to begin again tomorrow. Seeking clarification helps you watch assumptions. Seeking clarification means you have to be a good questioner and ask for questionings that helps you get clarification on particular matters of the subject. You might not know everything. There might be new information that came into light. And sometimes we just think that we're so confident or assured of one course of action that we get into a situation and we're kind of stubborn in our needs. And so be open to the possibility that the conversation might end a different way than what you expected it to be. And so between your listening and questioning, it might end someplace differently. And being open to that means that you might have to ask questions and go a different course of direction. And so that can only happen if you're open to that and you're able to ask questions. And sometimes it also means that we have to admit that we're wrong. And so sometimes apologizing or saying, you know, that's a good point, I didn't think of that, is also being assertive as well. And please don't get caught up into a fight. I mean, the assertive doesn't mean that you're always going to get what you want. Being assertive doesn't mean that you're always right. And people who will fly off the handle at you or become aggressive or hostile, they really are trying to get you caught up into this web in this fight. And the minute you do that, you are going to become aggressive and you're going to lose your ground. So if you're feeling that you're getting that hostility built up into you, the best thing I can tell you to do is to stop and listen. Let them vent, and they will eventually kind of calm down. And you go back to some of your listening techniques or asking questions again, and that will kind of de-escalate the situation. So be careful not to get caught up into that fight or to that web, I call it. Being assertive also means that you don't have to level people. You don't have to raise your voice. Certainly there's no need for any inappropriate language or comments to be made. But some people, some of our more passive friends, they are more likely easily to get hurt or a little bit more sensitive. So you want to be prepared for that. Part of the preparation for having these kind of difficult conversations is knowing who you'll be talking to, showing some sensitivity that they might be hurt by that. But it shouldn't interfere or stop you from having those conversations with them. Again, you're only responsible for having the conversation, how you're going to say it, not responsible for how the receiver is going to take that information. So, and sharing understanding that you recognize that you've thought about their perspective. You know, I understand that this is difficult to hear, you know, and sharing that understanding, showing that you have some compassion for the person's feelings doesn't mean that you're not being assertive anymore. Being able to say no and set limits. A lot of people can't do that because they feel guilty, right? How many of you right now feel, oh, I can't do that. I feel bad when I have to say no. I'm ridden with guilt. I always want to help people. So and I always tell people, well, you say no, but say because. Give a reason why you're saying no. And I think that that gets rid of the guilt a little bit from people to say, you know, I can't do that right now because this. But maybe later, you know, and if you give a reason for saying no, then that kind of softens it a little bit. And I think that helps people who have that tendency to have that guilt a little bit. So, and really watch the nonverbals. I certainly can't get into the nonverbals on a webinar, but we will get into a lot of the nonverbal communication in the in-person workshop. Nonverbal communication is responsible for about 70% of our communication styles. So it's so important. I can't tell you so much about the way we stand, the way we use our eye contact, our hands, our gestures, the symmetry, people standing, people sitting, the distance that we're away from each other, our facial expressions, the way, you know, our words don't match the way our facial expressions are saying. I've had people try to fire people, but they're seeming so serious, but yet they were smiling when they were trying to fire people. I mean, it's just really so much of our nonverbals, and it takes a lot of practice to make sure that your nonverbals are in sync with what's verbally coming out of your mouth. So we will go through a lot of those demonstrations at the in-person workshop. So you really have to watch your nonverbals as well. And of course, I have funny stories to go along with that too. So those are just some basic tips for effective communication. It takes a lot of practice, it really does. So I also wanted to leave you with some easy ways to give feedback, especially since in the polls were clearly showed a lot of the emotional hesitancy in having these difficult conversations about I want to be liked, I'm afraid of hurting people's feelings. So I want to give you two very quick and easy techniques of how to give people feedback. They're easy to learn, easy to do, quick in and out, not going to hurt anybody's feelings. So, and you're going to be so surprised. So, Marion, I can't believe how quick and easy this is. I've never done it before. So the first one is, when you, I feel, so can we. Okay, so let me give you an example. Silly things. So, so when you do this, it makes me feel this way. So can we agree to this? An easy example might be, Sue, when you interrupt me in the middle of a meeting, I feel like you don't respect what I'm saying. So can we agree that you will hold off your questions until the end of the meeting? How simple could that be, right? I was feeling uncomfortable with how Sue was always interrupting me in the meetings. And I was just telling her how I feel. And I was like, I proposed a way that she could still say what she needed to say, but that I wasn't going to feel the way I was feeling anymore. So Sue, when you interrupt me, I feel disrespected. So can we just have you hold off on that until the end of the meeting with your question? When you, I feel, so can we, right? It's very simple. It's direct. I'm taking ownership for how I'm feeling, and I'm proposing a solution for that. So I think that that's really helpful. It's easy for you to fill in the blanks, and it's quick, down, and dirty. Everything that I said in my tips of easy communication, okay? If you feel that that doesn't work for you, another quick and easy way, 4 steps though. First one was 3 steps. This one's 4 steps. Approach, describe, impact, vote of confidence, okay? The number 1, approach. Now don't laugh. So this is why good thing Carolyn's got you muted, but approach. The first thing you have to do is you have to approach the person that you have to talk to. That's the most scariest thing that people have to do. So you have to approach the person. You have to describe the behavior, what is going on. You have to show the impact of the behavior on the rest of the team, okay? And leave the person with a vote of confidence. Leave with them with, I believe you can do it. I know you can do it. I know we can get back to normal, okay? So here's an example. So approach the person. Hey, John, can I talk to you for a minute? Describe what's going on. You've been late this whole week to work. So what's the impact of that? When you're late to work, that impacts the whole team. Not everybody's worried about you, but they're also pitching in to do all the stuff that you haven't been able to do in your morning routine. So, and what's the vote of confidence? You want to express that you believe that they can change. And that's unlike you, John, because you're always here on time. I know that you can get back to normal next week, and I'm confident you can do that. So, okay, so if I put that all together, hey, John, can I talk to you for a minute? You've been late all week. I'm not sure what's going on, but the rest of the team's worried about you, and they've had to do your work for you. So I know we can get back to normal because you're not normally like that. So I look forward to doing that. Okay. Thanks for understanding. So it's approach, describe, impact, vote of confidence. So it's a little bit more to it than the first one, but it might apply in a team environment. It might be a little bit more appropriate depending on what the circumstances are. But either one of those ways, I think they're quick, easy, they're clear. I don't think there's any hard feelings associated with it. If you had to document it later on in a side file, I think all the points are there. but there's nothing to feel scared about. You're not gonna hurt somebody's feelings with those things, but it allows you that clarity to get in and get out. It's very assertive, and I hope that helps you break the ice. And I think that when you get used to using those, little by little, that will build up your confidence in having assertive conversations with people. If you can do these with the simple of things, then that's going to build up your confidence to have some of the more difficult things down the road. So, my closing thoughts for now, I'd like you to go back to the beginning when we first started this session. I asked you to think about two things, really what brought you to this webinar today. One, I asked you to think about the types of people or situations that you wish you were more assertive in, and what one thing you liked to learn that would boost your confidence. And, hopefully that there might have been one thing at least that you learned from today's session that would help you be more assertive and confident when dealing with difficult conversations, that might help you in those things that you started to think about in the beginning of the session. My advice to you is that over the next 1 or 2 days, that you quickly put those into action and try those out. Write it out. Put your date and time, your situation down on paper when you're going to put that into action. The sooner you do that, the more likely it is that you will learn from that session, that you will learn from that technique, okay? And it will become a new habit for you. The longer you put it off, it's not going to be as good, might not be as effective, or you'll be a little fuzzy for you to implement. So, and then you'll continue to use it. So if you think, no, there wasn't really anything too much from today, I'm not real sure I got it, then your next thing to do, I think, is to sign up for the in-person, because I think you'll get more out of it. The next session in person will cover this material in more depth. Plus, we'll be dealing with the aggressive, passive, the manipulation and defensiveness piece in more depth. We'll be talking about passive and passive-aggressive communication styles. We'll be dealing, again, with being aware of and understanding the impact of our nonverbal cues much more. And again, we'll be role-playing effective feedback scenarios and difficult conversations as well. So, so that is my some closing thoughts for you now. I hope I did give you some tips and tricks that might help you, at least for today, and whet your palate just a little bit. And I think we do have time for some questions, Carolyn, if there are any, or any things that I missed in chat along the way.
I'm encouraging folks to submit their questions. If you'd prefer to speak, please raise your hand and I'll unmute your microphone. But we don't have anything submitted. There was a comment though, when you were asking the poll question about the fears of why people don't speak up. Some people are concerned that it would affect their chances at a future promotion. So we didn't really delve into that, but that is a real fear that people have.
Mm-hmm. That that you would avoid dealing with a conflict because it would affect them getting a promotion.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I don't want to talk too much about that, because I'm sure that, I know that there's a union environment as well. And so I don't want to interfere with any formal documentation process that I know that's probably in play there. So I would refer definitely back to human resources policies and procedures that you might have in play there. So it's unfortunate that you feel that way, but I understand that. So, I mean, I'm not sure if the person's in a supervisory role or not, but so I would imagine, I mean, if you're in a supervisory role, you almost have to have those difficult conversations. But if you're not in the supervisory role and you're feeling like that, I would encourage you to go to your human resources department for advice on how best to handle those scenarios.
So another question has come in. What do you do when the supervisee, so the person you're supervising, doesn't hold the same view of their behavior?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is interesting because our next month's topic, Carolina, is going to be on supervision as well, and that sometimes the two are so closely related for sure. I often really start with expectations, and I always talk about my expectations of staff and also have them share their expectations of me. And so when we come down to having conflicts about what has occurred and accountability, we really talk about how those expectations were not met. And so then I think it's easier to hold people accountable to that. Um, and when I'm doing performance appraisals as well, I have people do their own self appraisals too, to understand their perspective more on what they're doing. So that it's not always top down. So I'm hoping that people are looking at themselves as well. So I don't, that way you're getting their perspective. So it's not always that top down. So I'm not sure of the whole scenario there, but I think that if people are given, they know the expectations from day one. I think if they're given the opportunity to also share in what their expectations are and share in their own perception of how they are doing in their job, then those conversations become a little bit easier. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's great.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And another question has come in, which first they're saying that this has been a great presentation. Really appreciate the tips for easy ways to give feedback. And this, I know you mentioned in the one-day workshop, you're going to be role-playing and really giving more tips on how people can interact with people with different styles. So this question relates to the different styles that other people have. I feel like those tips that you provided today work best for people with a more aggressive style. What about someone who's more passive or passive-aggressive in their reactions to difficult conversations? I feel some people I work with who are more passive and may simply nod and apologize, but we may not get to the root cause of the issue. Any tips there?
Mm-hmm. People who are really passive, or even passive aggressive friends, I really take a teacher role with them, and I take every moment I can to teach them and encourage them to come out of their shell. And give them opportunities to be more assertive. And so an example of people that I've had, especially in meetings, sometimes we think passive people just aren't interested, but I think there's a quiet wisdom about them. And in a group setting like that, I'm very in tune with the group dynamics, and I really try to say, particularly call them out, or I'll say to them before the meeting, look, I think you have a lot to say. I said, I really encourage you to talk, speak up more this time, or in advance, I'm going to ask them, look, I'm going to call on you first, or to just share that piece. Is that okay with you? And I think that the more that you give them the opportunity, or they know that you're going to do that, then they little by little come out of their shell. I think that the more assertive and aggressive people in the room kind of dominate things, and so they never get a chance to come out of their shell. So it might be a lot of group dynamics for you to manage as the supervisor in the room, that you might have to control a little bit your assertive people, the people that always talk, to say, look, I'm really trying to get Joe out of his shell. Why don't you guys wait until the second or third person to talk, because I need everybody else's participation first, and then I'm going to come around to you afterwards. I'm doing that on purpose. And so sometimes you really have to plan that out to do that. So I think it's a teaching moment to try to pull more of your passive people in. And they all have different learning styles as well. Some people might not want to speak a speaking role. Some people will want to do it separately in one-on-one later. Sometimes they might want a different assignment, but I think they all have a way to contribute. And so, and you'll be able to find that way with them. It might be one-on-one instead of the group, but it doesn't mean that they're not really interested. So, but you'll have to find that out, what it is for that individual person. I think it's more challenging with the passive aggressive individuals, or because there's a little bit more manipulation that goes on there. So you'll have to really call them on that. You know, people who will continue to go to you and say, how do I want to put it? If they keep going to you for advice and it's good advice, then you're creating a dependency. They're going to keep coming back to you. But if they come to you for advice and it doesn't work, then they're mad at you, right? Right? So you have to kind of like stop that dependency. And so you don't want them to always come to you and utilize you for that. So at some point you have to teach them to be that for themselves instead of leaning on you all, because then they blame you for it. So you have to call them on what's happening in that conversation. So it is tricky. It's very tricky to be caught in that web. So.
Thanks, Marianne. If there are any other questions, feel free. We do have a few more minutes left of the webinar. You can enter them in the Q&A or raise your hand and I'll unmute you and you can speak. We will be recording, we have recorded this program too, so we'll be sharing the recording with everyone. We'll post it on the SUNYSAIL.org website. So if you search for our webinar page, you'll see the recording in the next day or so of today's program. So if you've enjoyed today, share it with a colleague. And as Marianne has suggested, this is just a preview of the full day hands-on workshop, which will be hosted in Syracuse at the SUNY Center for Professional Development. If you haven't attended a SUNY SAIL workshop in the past, we have really designed them to be an easy addition into your professional development schedule. So traveling in and out should be available to you in the same day. This one is in Syracuse, so very centrally located. We start at 9:30 and end at 3 p.m. So we've really tried to make the timing convenient, and lunch is provided. So we really hope to see you there. And we've got a beautiful space if you haven't been to the CPD. And we look forward to having some great conversations. The Vegas rules will be in effect, so you should be very comfortable that you can share some, personal situations about conversations that you've been putting off, and we really hope to give you additional tips for how to address some of those issues that are really holding you back in your work. Oh, the other thing that I'd like to mention is that any SAIL program, we accept CPD member points. So there wouldn't be any dollars exchanged. If your campus, which most of the SUNY campuses, 54 out of the 64 in fact, are members of the CPD, we will happily accept your CPD membership points for the program fees. So on our website, there's a link where you can find who your CPD points contact is if you'd like to request to be able to use some of the CPD points. But our workshops, the one-day workshops, are for CPD members the best price possible, and they are $199, and that does include the lunch. Well, Marianne, I am not seeing any more questions or hands raised, so I will thank you for a wonderful session today, and thank you all for joining us in the Zoom webinar format. I hope that you found today to be valuable. A 1-hour session just to refresh all of us on assertive communications, I think, is time well spent. We will have more complimentary webinars which will serve as previews to our full lineup of programs. Marianne will be back in October 11th, leading a webinar from 11:30 to 12:30 again on empowered supervision for organizational performance in higher education. She will be joined by an attorney from SUNY System Administration who can really speak to the unionized environment and that particular dynamic that is part of all of our landscape. So the one-day workshop on empowered supervision is October 24th, and the preview webinar is on October 11th at 11:30. So I hope you'll mark your calendar for that program. We also have a program on transformational leadership for student success, which will be led by Dr. Scott Vinciguerra, who's the SAIL Leadership Development Associate. He will actually be traveling to New York City, Syracuse, and SUNY Geneseo, really covering some ground here to offer you this new program on transformational leadership for student success. So if you've been to a SAIL workshop in the past, you may have met Scott, but he's very energetic, and it would be a wonderful session that he's putting together as we speak. He'll have another leadership session that he's offering in November, Shifting Mindsets for Successful Leadership in Higher Ed. So both of those programs that Scott is leading will have a preview webinar and also in-person one-day workshop. So he'll be, again, in New York City, Syracuse, and Geneseo for a program, Shifting Mindsets for Successful Leadership in Higher Education. So those are just a couple of the programs that are coming your way. We're also excited to have some guest presenters this fall. We'll be joined by Dr. Kirk Young, Jamestown Community College's Vice President for Enrollment Management and Institutional Advancement. He'll be joining the group in Syracuse, offering a session October 25th. On leading your campus through change and conflict. So similar to the theme on assertive communications, but jumping into some of the change management theory and giving some tools on how to manage conflict and work through large-scale change in higher ed. We are very pleased to have President Randy Van Wagner, the president of Mohawk Valley Community College, join us in just one short month. On October 10th, he'll be out in Syracuse. And he'll be talking about competing on culture, driving change in higher education. So he has authored a book on this topic, and I've recently, as part of the summer leadership program, I think some of you may have been in that program, we had a fireside chat by the president of Cobleskill, and she just inadvertently talked about meeting Randy Van Wagner and going to his campus and noticing how they really approach culture and change and have a really unique way of dealing with culture on their campus. So I think this is going to be a really eye-opening and unique program, and I would encourage all of you to attend that. That will be the feature of the next Higher Education Leadership Lens. So if you haven't already, go back to the SUNYSAIL.org homepage and enroll in our newsletter. And that will be the next topic coming in just a week or so on competing on culture, driving change in higher education. So we've got a busy fall, and we're excited to offer all of these programs and several free webinars so that you can join either at your own computer or in a conference room with your campus and then have some enriched discussion after the programs. But we look forward to meeting you in person at our workshops, and if you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm the Assistant Director here at the SAIL Institute, headquartered in Albany, and our main email address is leadership@suny.edu, or you can reach me by email, carolyn.matisky@suny.edu, and I'm sorry I don't have this up on a slide, but the next time I will. And my phone number, if you'd like to give me a call, I'm happy to talk to you, 518-445-4201. So with that, I will conclude today's program. We will have this recording available on our website, and thank you again to Ms. Mary Ann Stark.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.